But next, we've got a really great panel. We've got a fireside chat with Dan and Hanno. Hanno, how are you today? It's good to have you here.
Yeah, it's good
Dan,
to
you
be
too?
here, Eric. Good to see you. And obviously, Dan, good to see you as well.
You too, Hanno.
I'm going to jump off and let the two of you have it.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Thank you for that, Eric. I actually wish we could have done this fireside chat before this panel that everybody just witnessed. I had a whole plan what I wanted to ask Dan, but a lot of the things were already covered by by the panel here. But Dan, I will just start out with virtual production, uh, you know, real-time rendering on an LED screen. So is this the death of the green screen finally? I mean, something that I think the industry has dreamt about for a long time. Do you think this is it? This is the moment?
Boy, interesting. I think it's going to be a percentage drop off, accelerating over time. I
Mhm.
think there are still some shots and some things you still have to do with green, even if it's on an LED panel, because you still do have the advantage of actually throwing up green within your camera frustum on an LED stage and shooting on green if the visual effects that are going to be required for the background are beyond what can be handled in real time today at that frequency or frames frames per second, etc. And but eventually, yeah, I think we're going to get there, and especially with the adventure that you're on now with Azure and cloud computing, we're going to be seeing some pretty exciting things where the desktop computer level of compute is going to just kind of dissolve away in favor of as much compute as you need to pull off what you can envision.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's obviously what we're here to do, and we're working with you guys at Halon. We're working with the game engine companies. Was good to see Miles on that panel previously here, and so where to your point that really on-prem or in your home compute at some point I think is probably really going to disappear, and you basically the devices that you have at home or even in an office basically just provide the connectivity back to some form of cloud infrastructure. Actually, one key person at a major game engine company actually recently said that he can already envision in the next 2 to 3 years that there's going to be workloads for real-time rendering or for gaming, actually, for that matter as well, that just won't be even feasible on-prem, or let alone a home computer of some sort. And so we're clearly
Yeah.
migrating there. Huge sets, hundreds of square miles of content. And so can you talk about this a little bit more? Maybe also, what you see in the horizon in terms of technology. So I think, all waiting for Unreal 5 to come out, I think later this year. Maybe talk a little bit about, what your expectations are for that.
Sure. Well, I think going back to what you're talking about in terms of like the next generation of game environments being so huge and diverse that it's almost impossible to download or run locally on a PC. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the day when I can actually build a game in a data set as large as Google Earth, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got Google and Niantic and Apple and a few other companies that are raising uh, billions and billions of dollars for scan the world exercises, basically, and they're using it for different methodologies. I'm sure Google is using it for self-driving cars and for maps and for probably autonomous drones and all sorts of different things. And they want to take that into your home, into stores, into stadiums, etc. And eventually, you know, your sensors on your cell phone will probably be sort of all encompassing. Privacy concerns aside, will probably be like I don't know if anybody out there's played Cyberpunk 2077, but one of the coolest things in it is this thing called the brain dance. And the concept is that everything you see with your eyes is sort of recorded as a photogrammetric matrix, and you can actually pause time and swim around it and sort of use it as a problem solving tool in the game. And I see that really as sort of a future thing where and bringing this back to filmmaking and storytelling, where you could pretty much dial up any place on the world at a moment's notice and put it in front of a filmmaker or in front of a camera or behind a camera,
Mhm.
and it's just there, it's ready to go. And maybe your artists are tacking on some sci-fi stuff, or reversing the time to bring it back to the 80s or whatever. But eventually these data sets are going to be so universal and ubiquitous, and complete, that it won't even be a question anymore. It's really more about what your imagination will be able to do with it.
Yeah, and actually also at Microsoft here, we've seen this with the flight simulator that came out last year, where we did a
Yeah.
a ton of very realistic and real ground truth data that's in there. So you fly into Dubai, and actually it is the real Dubai that you can see outside of your simulated window.
Yeah, and by
And
the way, a fantastic application of AI used um, to not have to build every building on the planet. Every building kind of exists in Flight Simulator, but like a large percentage of it was actually built by an autonomous AI that just
that's
extruded based on shadows and depth maps and all sorts of 2D photography, which is
right.
where we're going.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we worked with Blackshark.ai, who did a lot of that work. And by the
great.
way, that then leads to things like location scouting, right? You don't even have to, get out of your chair there anymore to do that, which is actually really going to be amazing. And like Chris in the previous panel said, you want to shoot something in the street corner in Sao Paulo? Okay, you don't even have to leave town. You just load that into your into your set, and you're good to go. Actually, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of a marketplace evolves from there, where instead of constantly hiring artists to recreate things that have already been created a lot of times. And obviously when I was at Fox and you were already at Halon, we talked a lot about that interchange of assets, and really make them reusable and repurposable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think dovetailing on that, I gave a presentation at a DGA day a few months back. Man, it could have been a half a year ago. Who knows? In the pandemic time, it's all relative at this point. But I basically just showed Google Earth or Google Studio as a location scouting tool, and it is really, I mean, to us in the industry who have access to all these amazing tools, it is really pretty much the bottom of our abilities, but it is still very prescient for people who don't have all the tools at their disposal, or are not digital artists, to be able to actually go in and do that. And just to dovetail on that, I guess just to talk about the virtual, what we're calling sort of the digital. It's not a digital double; it's a digital twin of the Earth,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Yeah.
Um, I'm excited for that, but at the same time, it's a little passe because we can just kind of walk out and go see it if you want. What I'm really excited about is what people will build on top of that, virtually and digitally, that
Mhm.
we'll all be able to see using AR tools and the eventual glasses, etc.
Mhm. Although I think digital twins, obviously have a lot of different applications, when it comes to, simulating something, or, even, creating training videos, and stuff like that. But, uh, one of the things that we're working on is, so obviously digital twins is a huge, topic at Microsoft, as it is at many of the other tech companies. But one of the things that excites me is, as we're creating these digital twins for these different industry applications. Let's say, a car manufacturer is going to create a digital twin, and actually they're doing that already. I mean, we've seen that firsthand, where car manufacturers already have full-blown 3D, digital models of the cars
Right,
that they
for autonomous
manufacture.
driving training and stuff. Yeah.
And it's actually, even customer facing applications, like build your own kind of car before you order it, and see what it looks like from the outside, the inside. But it's basically the real deal. And so in the future, if you need a digital model, let's say for a Ford Mustang, you don't have to hire a group of artists and figure out how from reference photography how to make that one. You can just call up 1-800 Ford Motor Corp, and order one for $20 or whatever, and it's the real thing. It's the real color, it's the real
Right.
dimensions, it's the real options. And and everything. So it's stuff like that really excites me. But and Dan, you and I have talked about this a lot over the years here. Uh, what do you actually where do you see the industry going? Is it and Sam kind of touched on this a little bit, that what we're doing here is still all as flat as a pancake, as you said. Where do you think storytelling is going in terms of, I think there's always going to be a linear part of this, but where are we going in terms of making it more immersive? Since we now have digital
Right.
twins of everything, we have all sets in digital form, all characters in digital form. Where can we take this in the future?
Well, I think we've all been dreaming about this thing called the metaverse for a long time.
Yeah.
Tim Sweeney speaks about it often, and Epic and other companies are talking about creating it, or that it's already kind of here in a nascent basic format, and it'll eventually grow into something bigger than itself. Um, but but I think ultimately, when we start to think about linear storytelling, I think we all need to start thinking about the jump from the silver screen or from the television in your living room to how to bring people into your stories, how to give them some agency, how to give them the ability to even create their own stories within your universes. I think there's many people talking about creating movies in game engines now, like animated films, but eventually the quality of those will start to bridge the gap somewhere between animated and realism, and I think we'll reach a time when we need to just give those assets, give those characters, give those environments to the community, to the fans. And much like the gaming community, which is where I sort of started my career, where we mod things and create our own stories and our own fan extensible content. Eventually, your linear stories will be modded and changed, and people will be putting their own stories into your worlds, or into the author's worlds. And I think ultimately that's going to create um, some amazingly compelling content that is being done by people who wouldn't traditionally have access to the budgets and the tools that we in Hollywood
Yeah.
typically have.
Yeah, and that I agree with as well. Again, when I was at Fox, we actually did a couple of projects with film school students, or just actually literally fan art, where you just give people some assets and have at it, and figure out what
Yep.
you can do with this, and the results are amazing. And I think yeah, and especially with the advent of cloud infrastructure and cloud computing, where you basically rent everything as you go and you only pay for the time that you're actually using it, I think we're going to clearly see this a democratization of content creation, which is going to be really interesting, because I think which means the creatives have a lot of the control, and it's going to be interesting to see how the established business community around this actually really adapts to this.
Yeah, I
um
think there's a mental change storytellers need to make as well. And I think typically, your typical Hollywood production exhibits a fantastical amount of control over the sanctity of their IPs and their stories, and at some point, I think you have to accept that fans do have good ideas, and eventually they'll outstrip our ability to create a fully fleshed out world.
yeah,
And sometimes
yeah.
you got to let it go in order for it to come back. So
Yeah, yeah. I talked about this not too long ago with Elizabeth Daly, who was the dean of obviously the School of Cinematic Arts at USC, and she said she keeps telling her students, and a lot of which really went on to become major producers or directors, that as soon as you're done and you've delivered your movie or your TV show to the audience, is no longer yours. It belongs to the audience, and they will all see it
that's right.
differently, and
Yep.
in their own way. And that's the way it is. And I think, yeah, I think to actually give people those tools to actually make it their own, truly, it's going to be really interesting. Also, what the interplay then is going to be between artists, and audience. I was at a seminar that was obviously pre-COVID that Alex McDowell did, and he kind of compared it to it almost goes back to much more archaic, kind of versions of storytelling where the storyteller was directly interacting with the audience, and
That's
they were
right.
making and so we may actually get back to that a little bit, where there's really a lot more of a feedback loop than we have today. So yeah,
Assembling your fans around the virtual fire pit.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, awesome.
Everybody can choose the color of the flames and everything.
exactly.
So, all
Well,
right.
thank you two so much. Really appreciate it. Such a great history you guys have in the industry, and really
And
appreciate
we could go on for an hour.
I know, Eric, next time you got to give us more than 15 minutes here.
I know, I should have done that. I'm really sorry. I tried to keep this
Okay,
under
it's
3
good.
hours
All
today. But
It's cool.
wonderful. Thank you guys.
See ya. Thanks, Eric.